Coach, thanks for taking the time to join us here via Zoom and remote distancing as we are in week 1 billion of this bizarre time. And we're trying to get through it by doing what is responsible. And this is sort of an indicator of that, trying to stay separate and stay safe and keep washing hands and follow guidelines.
No doubt. Well, I appreciate you guys having me. It's definitely a unique time, to be working from home, but we have faith in our leadership and everything, all the guidelines that are set before us. We're just working hard as much as we can with the tools that we have.
You have a sense, and you're the special teams coach here now, and you were special teams with Coach Rolovich at Hawaii as well. Do you already have a sense of who you'll be coaching in practice? When will you get to that point?
Well, I did have a special teams meeting with the guys, and it was more so just talking about culture and kind of what we're trying to get accomplished as a unit. Part of I guess spring ball allows us to be able to see where guys fit a little bit, but at the same time, with us being a new staff, 15 practices was going to be great for us to get a head start on that, but it was also going to bleed into fall camp. And if anything, this just gives us an opportunity to get to know each other even more. Where guys fit and positionally what they're going to do, I can't answer that yet. But I will say guys are hungry. They want to compete. They want to contribute because I think everybody has, the same frame of mind that they can contribute in some fashion.
Cougar fans have kind of gotten used to seeing starters play special teams with what Mike Leach did. Do you get the sense that same thing might happen? Do you even know yet? I don't mean to get ahead of it. I'm just trying to get a sense of where you guys are in planning.
No, I was fortunate to work with Coach Roll the past couple of years, and he's a huge proponent that the best players play. Now, obviously, we're going to have a common sense approach, and if there's a guy playing the whole game on offense or defense, it doesn't mean they're going to be a six-core special teamer. But if they have the ability to help us on one or two units, then, that can make us that much more explosive, whether it be punt return, kickoff return, even field goal block. Part of that is my job is trying to find the best mix of guys to contribute on that unit to be as explosive as possible. But a lot of that involves utilizing starters because obviously they've showed a skill set on each side of the ball that will help us in some fashion.
At a really extreme version of the utilization of the new fair catch rule was Air Force. We saw that in the Cheez-It Bowl. Yeah. They had a handful of returns all year. They just fair catch everything and play it safe and go with a longer field. Do you sway one way or another in terms of philosophy of kind of playing it safe and making sure you have possession and maybe 75 yards to go versus trying to pop the big one and taking some risk in the return game?
Yeah, it's unique. And, I think there are a lot of advantages to the rule. But also a lot of it deals with game situation, whether you think you have a personnel advantage, maybe you think that you have an opportunity to get a big play. Because if you fair catch everything on kickoff return, you're not going to get anything past the 25-yard line, right? So for us, we're going to take a common sense approach. And, if we think that we have the ability to hit a big one, then we will. But if the game calls for us to fair catch it, to give the ball back to the offense at the 25-yard line, then we'll do so. I think there's, moving forward, there should be a set of rules with each kickoff return team across the nation of what guys choose to fair catch versus what not. And we certainly coach our guys, obviously depending on situation, time of the game, all those things contribute to that.
You mean rules like as coaches that you kind of instill in the guys of like, hey, in this situation, let's fair catch this time and down with the time on the clock and the score and all that?
100%. If you're getting the ball kicked off and it goes 8 deep in the end zone, that's probably not an opportune time to return it, right? Or if you are up with a certain score differential that requires you just to own the football and to make sure that the ball's on the 25-yard line, then I think that calls for it, but there's certainly instances where your team might need a momentum boost or where you think that you have the ability, because it is the first play of offense, kickoff return. So, if you think that you have the opportunity to get a big gain, then I certainly think that it calls for getting the ball, taking it out.
How much have you looked at the kicking game for who's punting, who's kicking, kickoffs? Jack Crane did all the kickoffs last year. He's at Wake Forest now, I believe. Blake Mazza was great, but how much have you even had time? Have you looked at film? Have you seen what guys are good at?
Yeah.
Kicking range.
So I looked at a ton of film. I looked at every rep from the past couple of years. And I'm excited to work with Blake. I'm excited to work with Oscar. I think both those guys, being older guys in the program, have a sense of maturity that, when we talk, they genuinely want to be the best they can for this team. But in terms of technique and schematics, it was tough to really get into that right away just because we didn't have the opportunity to have spring ball. But what I will say is, we've had conversations, on what we see their strengths as and how we can maximize those. So those two guys, I think have the ability to be the best, some of the best in the conference. So, obviously there's a lot of responsibility on their hands during this time to be able to make sure that they're taking care of their bodies. They're still working out. And they're doing those things to where when we do get the green light, we have the ability to hit the ground running and maximize their talents.
There are, I feel like one of the great challenges of special teams in general is, we just talked about punt return, or kickoff return, I should say. There's also punt return, and then you've got field goals, extra points, etc. There's not a ton of practice time, and there's a lot to get in. How do you get good at, say, you want to punt, you want to block punts? That's what you want to do. That, let's say that's a staple of how you want to do it. Do you just practice that more? What's your thought on allocation of practice time and emphasis and what you want to try to be the best at?
I think, and it's funny that you asked that because it was something I wrestled around earlier in my coaching career, is how much time you should spend on certain attributes of a unit. And I truly believe it's about the people that contribute on it more so than it is the scheme. So if you're going to be simple, then you better make sure your culture's right. And that's something that I focus on, is the, 5 intangibles: relentless effort, passion, discipline, extreme toughness, and humility. I think all those are controllable. And when you build a culture based off of those 5 components, you have the ability to be good in the return game or in the block game. And then you figure out really what your personnel can do. If I think that we have the personnel to be a great pressure team, then we're going to come after it. And then we'll allocate probably a little bit more time to that. If I think that we have the ability to be good in the return game, then we'll probably allocate more time to that. Now, if I think that we could do both, with just watching the film, I do believe we can do both. We'll figure out a good middle point, and at the end of the day, keep it simple. Because if we want to keep it simple, then we can work on those things that I think are important, like the culture and making sure that Cougar fans that could be proud of the product they're seeing on the field.
Switch gears for a second here, looking at your path here to the Palouse. What was it like? You were at the Lions for OTAs, is that right? What was that experience like?
Oh, it was awesome. I was selected. I was one of 4 coaches selected nationally for the Bill Walsh Minority Internship. And, I had the opportunity to work alongside linebacker coach Bill Sheridan, and special teams coordinator and assistant special teams coach Joe Marciano and Devin Fitzsimmons when Coach Caldwell was the head coach. And it was, just a tremendous experience to be able to see kind of the day-to-day operations of an NFL organization. One of the things that I realized is you are dealing with a lot of people. This is their livelihood is on the line, and there's a sense of responsibility and ownership that a lot of those guys take. And it was such a cool experience to be able to contribute in the coaching realm of that side of things. And they were truly hospitable and allowed me to coach as much as I could. And, obviously as long as it was in the framework of what those coaches wanted, it was just, there's no better way to put it. It was fun. It was coaching ball at the highest level. And I was able to pull some things that I think fit into the college scheme a little bit of what we do. And so a lot of things that we implement, at least here at Washington State, will be some stuff that I picked up over there.
This is pretty random. I don't know how much time you've had to think about this, but the XFL, which just disbanded, had some unique takes on the kickoff and special teams. Now they also had like the double forward pass, and they were being experimental, and they could, but is there any merit to that sort of thing? Will they adjust rules, you think, in the NFL and college in any way, like what the XFL did? And I don't know how familiar Coug fans are with that, but very Googleable.
No doubt. I will say in the past 5 years, you've seen a lot of rule changes happen, and it's all based on player safety. So I think there's certainly opportunities to implement some of those. When you talked about the XFL kickoff scheme, I don't know it like the back of my hand, but what I did see is it's lower impact on a usually impactful play. So it gives people the opportunity not to just abandon the kickoff, because it's it was cemented in the grounds of football. This is what football was about. I used to dream about being on kickoff and setting the tone. So it at least gives an alternative if they want to continue to try and make it safer. I do know that these rule changes have kind of helped alleviate the stress of injuries, and it gives another alternative if they do decide to keep going forward with things like this. But I will say there's something so enjoyable about that first kickoff, seeing that ball fly 65 plus yards, and then having your guys run down with purpose, because it's the flagship, and I still think whatever rule advantages or whatever they do end up deciding on, our guys are going to be excited. They're going to play with passion. And it's still going to be the first play to set the first half and second half and really set the tone.
The biggest hit last year, I think it was on kickoff, was Tyrese Ross in Houston. He decleated one of the Cougars, and it was clean. Hard hitting is an attribute of a quality defensive football player, a guy who likes to hit cleanly. You never want to see injury, but
right.
How much is that being pulled away from the game? Is it okay? Are we seeing just a cleaner version of the game? Will it go too far, or has it gone too far? What's your philosophy on that?
Well, I think coaches across the nation have put more stress on, the technique of tackling, and, the collisions that are happening. They seem different, obviously with how much impact is going, but it's really the technique. And, I think you could have a hard hitting defensive player, that utilizes a safe technique where his head's not going through the crown of the helmet. He's able to set the shoulder, track the hip, and put his head behind as opposed to in front. So I do think you could still have a hard hitting defensive player, and it's just going to look different in terms of the technique. But maybe to the naked eye, people will see like, oh, that was a hard hit. But like you're saying, it was clean. So I certainly think that, coaches are spending a lot more time, including us, on teaching the fundamentals of tackling, because it's something, if you want to be a good tackling team, you got to practice it a ton. And there's certain drills that you can do to again, alleviate the stress off physical impact every time, but still work on the fundamentals of being a good tackling team.
Interesting. Thank you, Coach. Really appreciate your time. Be safe. Be well. I hope to do this in person in some version of spring ball or fall camp, whenever that may come. And maybe it's you get those practices back and you smush them together. I don't know how it works, but I hope we get to do it in person soon.
100%. I appreciate it. Stay safe and take care.
Thanks, Coach.